thank you so much for everyone who has shared today. I think coming in and following up on this, it kind of feels like I was trying to convince myself that it was okay to leave a couple of minutes ago because everyone has virtually already said everything that I was going to say. So I'm good. And as Kelly so kindly pointed out, I have all of the symptoms of what happens when you get in front of a crowd. Thanks for that. That was helpful. Kidding. So as my bio has already said, you know, I am a childhood sexual abuse survivor. That 2 years ago could not come out of my lips. It did not cross my mouth. And so to stand here today, I remember saying to someone, I have to do this work. I know that this is where I have to go. I have to go into it. I will do this work for myself, but it will never, be in my bio. And here we are. It's in my bio. Oh, is that okay? So when the One Woman Fearless event was posted for Newfoundland, I was getting ready to take a big group to Peru. I wasn't really paying attention to, a lot of things that were kind of going on. I saw it, I knew it was an event that I was going to attend, but everybody kept sending me the speaker's application. Tonya, you gotta speak here. Tonya, you're fearless. You're a warrior, you've gotta go tell people your story, you need to go and talk. And then finally, after about 30 times that it was sent to me, I realized, okay, universe, I get the message. So I submitted my application. And as you can see, my title is, what happens when we shift from fear to courage. But it got me thinking about what is fearlessness? What is that? And am I actually fearless? Because I don't feel it most days. Most days I feel that fear, that intensity that comes. And I started to think about these moments of impact, and it's so interesting. And I think that you're going to hear a lot of things that people have said earlier today. These moments of impact that almost every single person in this room has mentioned. The date, where they were, what happened. I call these moments of impact, some of them can be traumatic. We remember where we were, who was there, the oddest of details sometimes that just don't make any sense. And I remembered so many of those moments in my life, and I thought, am I fearless? Really? Because many of those moments that I was remembering as I reflected and thought about what I was going to talk about today, I wasn't fearless. And I remember one in particular when I was about 9 years old, I guess. I don't know the exact age. I've never actually asked anyone the actual age that I was. But I was getting off the school bus. I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. And the police were in my grandmother's yard. Now, if you grew up in Newfoundland around the bay, you know that grandmother's yard's next door to your yard. So I ran home because I wasn't raised in an environment where the police were good. I was raised in an environment to be afraid of the police. I suppose in some senses, my mother didn't know how to control us all, so she'd be like, if you're not good, the cops are coming, and they're going to take you. But as a child, that really instilled fear, and I'm wondering today if that wasn't a good thing, as it turns out. But I had this moment, this terror of seeing the police at my grandparents' house, and having grown up with family members who struggled with mental illness, it wasn't something that we hadn't seen, but it still elicited that fear. But this time when I ran home, I walked in my bedroom that I shared with my sister, who's actually here today, and my mother was sitting on the bottom bunk, and it was her bed. And I remember the bedspread was pink, and the room just felt so closed because I knew something bad was coming. And I stood there, and for my entire life, this moment, this image, frozen in time, of me with my school bag, holding here, while I was asked, what happened? Tell us, we know. If you don't tell the truth, the police are gonna come. You're gonna have to go with them. This was before they had proper protocol in place, I think, to talk to victims. So the police came because I wouldn't tell. I refused. There was a warrior inside of me that wasn't going down without a fight. I believed that it was my fault. And I thought that when they find out, I'm going to get in trouble. So I said nothing. I had a chance to speak. You will hear so many victims say, I never had a chance to speak, or I spoke and nobody believed me. People believed me. People wanted me to speak. They wanted me to say it, but I couldn't open my mouth to get the words out. All I could think about was, I don't want to get in trouble. The kids in the neighborhood were making up rhymes about our family. I just wanted to be normal. I wanted it to go away. I didn't understand why this had to happen to us, why this had to happen to me. I just wanted to be accepted. I just wanted to be normal. I just wanted to fit in. And that moment of impact stayed with me my whole life. You've heard about fight or flight today. What I never understood was freeze. It's the third part of PTSD. We freeze, and I never grew up. And that hurt, already traumatized child who is now re-traumatized and re-victimized by the very system that is supposed to help us, I froze. Nobody dealt with it in a way, and I remember them saying, she said it didn't happen, we have to go with it didn't happen. I wasn't fearless. I wasn't. My sister went to court. Cousins and relatives and aunts and uncles, they went to court. And I didn't. And I pretended that nothing happened to me. And I took this big, giant thing and I put it in this box and I said, it's fine. I'm fine. Bad things happen to people all the time. Get over it. Move on. I was maybe 9 or 10, worst case 11 by the time they were going through court. I distanced myself from that, from my family, from everyone I knew, and I spent the next 2.5 decades pushing people away. I developed eating disorders, a need for perfection. I was in relationships and friendships with people who had no idea who I was. I had no idea who I was. But you can only run from the past for so long. And then the pits of hell come calling, as many of you know. And the call came like I knew it would. He's dying. It was my mother. I said, but it never happened to me. Why are you telling me? But by that point, I mean, everybody in my family knew that it had happened, but we all just pretended. And I said, here it is. I'm married to a man who has no idea that this happened to me. I was in a life where not one single person knew this big giant secret that I was still clawing to like a cat, terrified to let go. But I wanted to, and it was the first time in my life that I stood up and I made a choice for myself, and I went to his funeral because I wanted to know, how would I feel? What is this going to happen when I look at him? And when I did, he was a victim too. I was his victim, but he was somebody else's victim. He was a victim of the system that covers it up. He was a victim of systematic abuse, childhood sexual abuse by the Catholic Church, covered up, used as a guinea pig, labeled mentally ill, and then let out to do what he did to numerous other children. He didn't understand what he did was wrong. And as I looked at him in that coffin, I thought, like, his life was ruined too. I wasn't angry with him. I didn't feel anything other than compassion, empathy. And that's a hard pill to swallow, right? For someone who's brought you some of the most horrific pain that you can ever imagine. But I didn't yet know what pain was, because I left the funeral and I thought, okay, that's done. Check. Like I did with everything else in my life, big check boxes, nice check marks. Do this, get the degree, do this, be skinny, be fit, run a, you know. But it came, and it was too late. The box had been opened, the box of darkness, that anything that I didn't like in my life I took and I popped in there. And then I had this unique ability. Maybe I don't think it's actually unique, I just don't, we don't talk about these things, but I guess it's disassociation. So I would take anything that happened to me that I didn't like, and I would pop it in that box. And then I would just pretend it never happened and mosey on about my day, like, write a new story up here. And that box opening up, it just wouldn't go back. I kept trying to shove everything in there, kick it back in, shove it back into the closet, every which way I could, and it wouldn't go. And over the course of 2 years, I fought it. I fought everything in me not to take that out. I didn't believe I was strong enough. I wasn't fearless enough to go there. I mean, I could, start a business. I could look like on the outside like I was really blazing my own trail. I could run fitness events and obstacle courses and, sign death waivers to do some of this stuff because, I was plowing through life, I think, grasping onto anything that made me feel, because for so long I had been numb, feeling nothing. I was just desperate to feel anything. But it all eventually crashed. And I found myself, from somebody who had been working 120-hour weeks, I could just get up, put on the mask, and go out into the world and do what I needed to do. Don't talk about your problems, just show up. To pretty well living in a onesie, crying from a place in my soul that I did not know existed. I had almost 30 years of stuff, more than 30 years of stuff to go through. How many times had I laid out the red carpet and let people walk all over me? And I tried to get flatter and flatter and flatter to make it easier. But on the outside, that's not what people thought. But on the inside, I don't know who I was. And this had come to bring me home to me. And one of the biggest things that happened was I had to face a fear of going into that and learning, who was I before that? Who was I going to be if that had never happened? And I went through it, and I went through all this darkness, and every mask and brick and piece came crumbling down, and I questioned every single part of my life. And then one day, it was over. The storm was gone, the warrior was out, and I realized it wasn't who I was going to be before it. It wasn't who I was going to be if it had never happened, because it did happen, and I can't change it. But it's about who I am going to be in spite of it. And that's my biggest piece, I guess, with I struggled, with even sharing my story. I was doing this work, and much like, Ginger, I was in the fitness industry. I mean, this wasn't where I was going, running women's retreats and, doing all this stuff that here I am. But, life threw me that curveball and decided that I had a bigger purpose, something else. But I struggled with actually sharing my story. I thought, do I own this story? Is it really mine? Was I fearless? I wasn't when I was 9. So do I have a right to stand up here today and say, I'm fearless? Because I wasn't fearless when my sister was. I wasn't fearless when I was 9. I wanted to save myself. But what I have learned since then is that I speak today for the millions of women who could not speak, who could not find their voice, who could not find their fearlessness, their fierceness, or their inner warrior. My story is important today because I chose silence, because I silenced myself, which was the worst kind of silence. I chained myself to that. And so today, I know I stand here and say, what is fearlessness? Fearless is not without fear. Fearlessness is being terrified and doing it anyway. All of the symptoms, the shaking, the insomnia, the sleeplessness, the questioning yourself and working through that box of darkness over and over and over again, that is the work that we're here to do for any of us who have experienced. And if you're here for a reason today to pick up some bits and pieces of, what everyone is saying is going to put you into your own fearlessness, because it is not about fearless, meaning no fear. It is about feeling the fear and moving forward one step at a time. what I realized for me was it was fear less and go forward anyway. Thank you. I have something to kind of clue up. I know that I'm running out of time. It's like So I have something that I would like to read. I'm usually not much of a reader, but I really want to get this message across, so I'm going to read for you. But basically, my message to you today is don't half live. Don't live a half life because of what happened to you. No matter what it is, what you did, what you didn't do, what you said or didn't say, I promise you that if you let yourself feel the fear and move through it, lean into it, you will be brought home to your own wild soul. The part of you that you buried with that wound, thinking that it was only going to take the pain, but it didn't. It took your light, it took your happiness, it took your sparkle, it took your shine. And when you go through that box of darkness, I promise you, it will be the most painful thing you will ever do in your life. I won't stand here today and lie to you about that, because there's a reason you put it in that box, because it doesn't make sense, and we don't have an answer for it. But if you do it, if you go in through that, you will find the parts of yourself that you lost when you buried that wound, when that was taken from you. And if you're lucky enough, something will shake you awake so that you can do this work, so that you can step into your own power, your own fearlessness. Fear less, courage us. Do that work. That's what fearlessness is. Because for too long, women have been trained to tread softly, to make others comfortable, to bury ourselves, to dull who we are, to give up ourselves, to sit on a shelf and look pretty. But those days are over. Look within, find who you really are. Pick up your sword and fight for yourself, because it's less about what happened to you and more about what you do about it. Who you become in spite of it, not because of it. Reclaim the warrior in you. She's waiting. Thank you.
Tonya Whittle.
Thank you.
Wonderful.